The dog wasn't trained to find bombs or drugs. He was trained to find the truth. And this time, the truth was wrapped in a blanket, drugged, and being carried right past security. Port Angeles Airport was quiet that morning, too quiet. A winter storm had grounded most flights, and the only sounds echoing through the terminal were tired footsteps and coffee machines hissing in the distance. Officer Samantha Keller, U.S. Marshal, had her German Shepherd, Diesel, at her side, calm, alert, always watching. But then Diesel froze, his ears perked, body tensed. In front of them stood a well-dressed woman holding a sleeping child in her arms. She smiled politely, said she was heading to San Diego, but Diesel growled, low, guttural, and refused to move. Passengers began filming. Tension grew. The baby never stirred, not once. That's when Sam's instincts kicked in. Something was wrong, deeply wrong. Moments later, a bolo came over the radio. A 2-year-old boy abducted just 48 hours earlier. And Diesel had just found him. But what came next would unravel a nightmare hidden beneath therapy retreats, stolen grief, and a doctor who believed children could be replaced. The fluorescent lights of Port Angeles Regional Airport buzzed faintly overhead, casting a pale, sterile glow across the near-empty terminal. Outside, the winter storm swirled thick and fast. Gusts of wind rattled the wide windows and shook slush from the rooftops. Most flights were delayed. Some outright canceled. But inside Gate 4A, the hum of tension wasn't about the weather. Officer Samantha Keller, Sam to those who knew her outside the badge, stood just inside the security checkpoint, one hand gripping the leash of her K9 partner, Diesel. The German Shepherd sat alert, body coiled, ears perked like radar. He was trained for threat detection. Behavioral anomalies. Not drugs, not explosives, people. And right now, Diesel wasn't just alert, he was growling. Across the terminal floor, a woman approached, gliding, not walking. She was elegant, composed, with a camel-colored wool coat that flared slightly behind her with each step. In her arms, she carried a bundled infant, tucked tight against her chest in a navy blue blanket. Her face was calm, maternal even. Everything about her said mother on a holiday flight. But Diesel wouldn't move. He stepped into her path. His tail stiffened. His lip curled. The woman blinked, startled. "Is there a problem?" Sam tightened the leash instinctively, her voice measured. "He's trained to alert to behavioral irregularities. I'm going to need you to step to the side for a quick check." "Seriously?" The woman's voice softened, but there was steel underneath it. "My baby's asleep." "It took me 20 minutes to get him down. We're barely making this flight." Sam didn't budge. Diesel wouldn't let her. "Ma'am, your name?" Lauren Hayes. I'm heading to San Diego." "My husband's waiting there." The bundle in her arms didn't move. Not a shift. Not a sound. Sam's eyes narrowed. She lowered herself slightly, kneeling beside Diesel to place a hand on his neck. His hackles were raised. "Ma'am," Sam said again, "please step to the side, just for a moment." Lauren looked around. Now passengers were noticing. A few pulled out their phones. The ones who weren't already filming were whispering. "What's wrong with your dog?" Lauren's voice cracked. "You're scaring people," Sam radioed in calmly. "Unit 4 requesting secondary check at 4A. Potential situation involving a minor." There was a flicker in Lauren's expression. The kind that happens between thoughts, not fear, not confusion. Something else, and Sam caught it. Within moments, a security team appeared from the far side of the terminal. Diesel barked once, sharp, insistent like a gunshot, and lunged forward, stopping just short of Lauren's knees. Sam held him firm, but the bark echoed across the terminal. A baby began crying somewhere in the distance. And still, the baby in Lauren's arms didn't flinch, didn't cry, didn't move. Sam stepped closer, heart thudding now. "Can I see the baby, please?" Lauren shook her head. "He's asleep." "You'll wake him." "Ma'am?" Sam's voice wasn't a request anymore. She reached forward, slowly, and brushed the edge of the blanket aside. What she saw underneath stole the breath from her lungs. The child was too still, pale, his lips slightly parted. There was a faint pulse at the neck, but it was weak, unnaturally so. Sam's hand flew to her shoulder mic. "I need medical on gate 4A now. Infant unresponsive. Suspected sedation." Gasps erupted behind her. Someone dropped their phone. Lauren backed up instinctively, clutching the child tighter. "You don't understand," she stammered. "He's mine. His name is Daniel. He's my son." But Sam wasn't listening anymore. A bolo alert buzzed over the radio. "Be on the lookout. Noah Whitaker, 2 years old, Caucasian male, brown curls, last seen wearing a navy blanket. Believed abducted from Yakima 48 hours ago. Suspect possibly female, 30s. Sam froze. Her eyes scanned the bundle again, the blanket, the hair. The age, it all matched. Diesel whimpered, a low, almost mournful sound, as if he already knew. Sam pulled back the blanket a little more and whispered under her breath, "Noah?" No response. She looked up at Lauren, who stood frozen, mascara streaking slightly beneath one eye. "Where did you get him?" Sam asked, voice low and dangerous. Lauren didn't answer. She just ran. Clutching the child to her chest, she bolted past the checkpoint, barely making it 3 strides before Diesel lunged forward and tackled her mid-thigh. She crumpled onto the floor, screaming. Sam moved in fast, scooping the child gently from her arms. The baby was breathing, but just barely. As paramedics rushed in and chaos erupted, Diesel returned to Sam's side, chest heaving, eyes still locked on the woman. Lauren Hayes was face down on the tile now, hands cuffed behind her back. Sam held the child against her jacket, whispering softly. Then she heard it, a whisper from the woman on the floor, barely audible. "He was supposed to be mine. They told me he was Charlie." And for the first time since Sam joined the Marshal's service, she felt the icy prickle of something beyond protocol, something darker, something that Diesel, her silent partner, her ghost detector in a fur coat, had sensed long before any human ever could. The triage team wheeled the baby away, sirens already screaming outside the sliding glass doors as a snowplow cleared the access ramp. Sam stood frozen near the edge of the terminal, her gloved hands still trembling from the transfer. Diesel leaned against her leg, solid, grounded, his eyes never leaving the trail of bloody slush that Lauren's elbow had left when she hit the ground. Travelers were still filming, whispering, guessing. A few clapped, some just stared. Lauren Hayes was now restrained in a wheelchair, a blanket over her shoulders, eyes vacant, as if the soul had left the building long before the body was caught. A TSA agent approached Sam from behind. "We've got press outside." "You want me to say anything?" "No," Sam muttered. "Not until I know what this is." The room shifted. Everything around her, voices, footsteps, intercom chatter, faded into a buzz. Sam crouched again and wrapped her arms around Diesel, burying her face into the warm space behind his ears. She didn't cry, didn't break. But she whispered, "Good boy, you saw something we didn't." Diesel whined softly and placed a paw over her arm, his breathing slow, controlled. Then her radio buzzed. "Unit 4, we've got a hit on the ID. Name's not Lauren Hayes. Real name unknown. No childbirth records, but we found 4 different alias IDs in her bag. All female, all mothers." Sam stood upright, all weariness gone. She turned to the paramedic who had wheeled the boy out. "How's the child?" "Vitals are stabilizing. Looks like mild sedation, nothing permanent." But another couple hours and this might have gone another way. Sam nodded and looked back toward Lauren, now eerily composed, staring straight ahead, like she was waiting for a plane that would never come. She walked over, crouched low. "What's his name?" Lauren looked at her. Her lips trembled. "Charlie." Sam narrowed her eyes. "That's not his name." A twitch. A flinch. "Noah," Sam said, watching for the response. The woman's entire face collapsed like a sandcastle caught by tide. "They told me his name wouldn't matter, that he would just remember me." Sam stood. "Who told you that?" Silence. She was about to press harder when a heavy footfall approached. "Marshal Keller!" came a deep voice. She turned to see Deputy Chief Brandon Locke, Homeland Security, gray-templed, weathered, and serious. He didn't waste time. "I want you to stay on this," he said. "This isn't random." "You know it, I know it." Sam raised a brow. "This some trafficking ring?" He shook his head. "Not in the usual sense. More like psychological operations. There's a pattern." "You're going to see it soon." Sam folded her arms. "What kind of pattern?" He nodded toward Diesel. "Ask your dog." "He already has the answer." She glanced down at Diesel, who sat calm but watchful, facing Lauren like a statue carved from instinct. Locke's voice lowered. "You still got his behavioral files? I keep every second of his training archived." "Why?" "Pull up the footage from his deployment in Louisiana." Sam's jaw tightened. "The flood rescue?" Locke nodded. "He refused to leave a dead child's body. Wouldn't move until the family arrived. You remember that?" "I remember," Sam said quietly. Locke's voice dropped lower, almost grim. "You know what I didn't tell you then? That wasn't the only time. Diesel's been flagged in at least 5 incidents involving missing or substituted children. All behavioral red flags, all ignored." Sam swallowed. "You think this woman was coached?" "I think she was convinced." He handed her a sealed folder. "And I think it's only the beginning." Sam looked down at the folder. Case file, Project Solstice. On the front was a symbol, an eclipse half-shadowed over a pine tree. Before she could ask, a low groan echoed through the security hallway. Lauren had begun humming softly to herself, a lullaby. Off-key, unnatural, and Diesel started growling again. Sam turned slowly. The woman had closed her eyes and through cracked lips whispered, "He was supposed to be mine. They promised. They said he'd remember me." And right then, Sam knew this wasn't just a kidnapping. It was a belief system. A system built on delusion, grief, and dangerous manipulation. Diesel stepped forward, low and steady, not barking this time, just watching. Waiting, and Sam followed his lead, because whatever storm had started in this terminal wasn't over, not even close. The fluorescent lights in the airport security room buzzed overhead, casting a sickly glow over the sterile walls. Officer Sam Keller sat stiffly across the interrogation table, fingers steepled, her eyes fixed on the woman they were still calling Lauren Hayes, even though they'd already confirmed that name didn't belong to her. Lauren's clothes were folded neatly in an evidence bag in the corner. She wore a gray jumpsuit now, her long dark hair pulled back in a tight ponytail. Her hands were cuffed, but she didn't look afraid. She looked calm. Serene almost, and that was what bothered Sam the most. The baby, Noah, was in the medical triage unit 2 floors below, hooked to IV fluids and under round-the-clock observation. Sam had been told he was stable, breathing on his own, but still not speaking. Still eerily quiet. "She's still saying the baby's name is Daniel?" Sam asked the attending paramedic who'd been first on the scene. "Yeah," the woman replied, shaking her head. "She wouldn't let go of that name. When we tried to say Noah, she started crying, like we were the crazy ones. Sam nodded, jaw clenched. She turned back toward Lauren. "You need to understand something," Sam said, voice level. "We've confirmed Noah Whitaker's identity. We've got fingerprints, hospital records, photos." "He's not yours." Lauren blinked slowly. "You're wrong. You're all wrong." Sam leaned in. "No, you are, because what you did could have killed that boy." "You sedated him." "I gave him a sleep aid," Lauren replied, almost defensively. "Just to help him transition. He needed time." "To remember me, to feel safe." Sam stared. "Remember you." "He's 2 years old." "He's Charlie," Lauren said with quiet certainty. "He was taken from me. They said if I came here, they'd make it right." Sam stood suddenly, chair scraping against tile. "She's delusional," someone muttered from behind the glass, but Diesel wasn't. That was the thing Sam couldn't let go of. Diesel had reacted before any of them had a reason to question. The dog had sensed something none of the scanners, badges, or agents did. He knew. And now, Sam had to prove he was right. Downstairs, in the hospital triage area of the airport's emergency wing, the child was finally starting to stir. He opened his eyes. They were a deep hazel, flecked with something pale at the edges. He didn't cry. He didn't speak. He simply looked around, blinking at the white ceiling, then at the unfamiliar nurses. When Sam entered, Diesel at her side, the boy shifted. A flicker of something passed through his eyes, recognition maybe. Diesel walked to the bedside and sat quietly, ears twitching. The boy turned to look at him, and then, softly, barely audible, the child whispered, "Ra." Sam froze. That was Diesel's nickname during his FEMA deployment, short for radar, a name used only during early stages of training. No civilian would have known it, not even the other marshals she worked with. It was too old, too specific. She knelt beside the bed. "Noah," she said gently. "Can you say that again?" But the boy had already closed his eyes. Too tired, too much. Still, the room felt like it had shifted. Diesel rested his head near the edge of the bed, as if to say, "It's him. He remembers me too." Hours later, after Lauren had been formally processed and taken into federal custody, Sam sat outside on a bench near the airport's snow-laced tarmac, drinking lukewarm coffee. Her fingers were raw from the cold, but her thoughts wouldn't settle. That's when a familiar voice approached. "Still don't believe in your dog's instincts?" She looked up to see Deputy Chief Brandon Locke again, his Homeland Security badge swinging slightly as he sat beside her. Sam didn't answer right away. Instead, she asked, "Who's they?" Locke raised an eyebrow. She kept saying they promised her the child. That if she went to the airport, she'd get him back. Locke exhaled slowly. "Yeah, we've been chasing whispers about this group for months. We've found women in different states, Colorado, Utah, Ohio, who were told similar things, that their dead child would be reborn, that they'd be able to reclaim them." "Sounds like a cult," Sam muttered. "Not exactly," Locke said. "More like a movement, pseudo-scientific. Blends grief therapy, experimental hypnosis, and something they call emotional transference." Sam stared at him. "You're telling me there are people out there convincing grieving mothers that other people's children are theirs?" "Not just convincing," he said. "Conditioning." "Rewiring, and they're good at it." Sam leaned forward, elbows on her knees. "Any names?" Locke hesitated, then handed her a sealed envelope. Inside, a profile printout. Subject, Dr. Julian Cross. Founder, Solstice Institute for Emotional Reintegration, based Oregon. "He's been on our radar before," Locke said. "Used to run grief counseling retreats, got shut down for ethical violations." moved to the private sector. Now operates somewhere in the pines near Bend. Sam flipped through the pages. He ever been charged? Never sticks. He uses shell companies, burner phones. Every woman we find who went through his programs, they're convinced he saved them. Sam closed the folder. I want in, she said. Locke smirked. I was counting on that. That night, Sam sat alone in her apartment, snow tapping against the windows like quiet reminders of everything she didn't say at work. Diesel curled on the floor beside her, head on his paws, eyes open, always alert. She pulled out an old hard drive from her closet, plugged it in, and opened the video files. FEMA deployment, Baton Rouge floods, 2016. One of the earliest missions Diesel had worked. She fast-forwarded to the moment she remembered. A body found beneath a collapsed porch, water up to the knees. Diesel refused to leave it. Everyone assumed it was instinct. Training. But it was more. She watched Diesel bark. Circle. Whine. Then lie down beside the child's soaked body, refusing to move even when called away. Now, years later, he'd done the same thing. With a living child, with a stolen boy, he hadn't been trained to detect grief. But maybe he didn't need training. Maybe he simply knew. The next morning, Sam was back at the hospital. Carol Whitaker, Noah's grandmother, had just arrived from Yakima. Her eyes were swollen. Her voice shook as she spoke to the boy. He didn't react much, but when she handed him a worn-out teddy bear with a missing ear, Noah clutched it tight, and Diesel moved closer. Then Noah reached out and placed a tiny hand on Diesel's head. That's when Sam knew this wasn't over, because Diesel wasn't just a K-9 officer. He was a witness to something bigger, and whatever it was, they were going to uncover it together. The snow had thickened outside, layering the tarmac in soft, white silence. Inside the terminal, time felt frozen too. Everyone was still talking about the incident. The woman, the baby, and the dog that wouldn't stop barking. Officer Sam Keller walked the terminal hallway slowly, Diesel padding quietly at her side. Every step echoed. Passengers watched her with cautious interest. The story had already gone viral. But Sam didn't care about gossip. She cared about what she couldn't explain. Diesel, a trained search and rescue K-9, had never reacted like that before. Not even during his deployment in hurricane zones or when sniffing out disaster zones in the Midwest. But with the woman, Lauren, he barked, growled. Blocked her path, almost like he knew something the rest of them didn't. And now, Sam had this itch. That what happened wasn't just some fluke, not a case of mistaken identity or motherly confusion, but a pattern. A warning, maybe even a setup. Back in the surveillance room, Sam pulled up the footage. Rewind to 10 minutes before the incident, she told the technician. Focus on the woman with the baby. Gate 14. The screen flickered, then stabilized. Lauren, dressed in a navy peacoat, oversized sunglasses, and carrying a fleece-covered baby in her arms, moved swiftly through the crowd. Not hurried, not lost, purposeful. Then something odd. Sam pointed. There. Freeze it. Just behind Lauren, 3 passengers turned their heads at the same time. 3 different angles, 3 different people. All eyes locked on her, and then back away, too synchronized, too clean. Sam narrowed her eyes. Run facial recognition on them. The tech hesitated. Ma'am, they're not flagged. Run it anyway. The system worked, spitting out blurry stills and search bars. A few hits came back, all international, none of them real name. One was tied to a defunct wellness center in Arizona. Another to a meditation clinic in New Jersey. Sam's chest tightened. She was starting to see the shape of it. This wasn't just one grieving woman. This was a system. Down in the airport's trauma unit, Nurse Clara adjusted Noah's blanket. The boy hadn't spoken again since whispering, "Ra," but he seemed calmer, as if something inside him had settled. Diesel sat close to the glass, eyes never leaving the child. Clara smiled. "You like the dog, huh, sweetheart?" Noah blinked slowly, then raised one hand and pointed. "Ra!" Clara turned. Diesel's ears perked. He didn't bark, he didn't move, but his tail gave one slow thump against the floor. It was the first sign of connection since Noah had been rescued. That night, Sam sat in her apartment, thumbing through the printouts Locke had given her. Dr. Julian Cross, the Solstice Institute, a supposed grief counselor with a history of radical therapeutic methods. She dug deeper. News clippings, patient testimonies, and obscure podcasts. One woman described it as a spiritual adoption experience. Another said she'd been reborn through the memory of her child. But the last one stopped Sam cold. Case file number 112. Olivia Barnes, Seattle, WA, 2020. Child was returned by Cross after 4 months of living under a different name. No charges filed. Biological mother refused to press. The reason? She seemed convinced her son wanted to go with the other woman, the file read. Sam closed her eyes. This wasn't therapy. This was psychological warfare, and people like Lauren were just pawns in something bigger. Meanwhile, in a dim motel 2 hours outside the city, a man in a gray wool coat lit a cigarette with shaky hands. He was watching airport news footage on an old TV set. When the camera zoomed in on Diesel, the barking K9, the man stood up slowly. "Stupid dog," he muttered. "Always ruins everything." On the desk beside him, a burner phone buzzed. He picked it up. "She's been taken in," he said. "But the boy's still there, alive." A pause. "Yes, I know." "No, we can't recover yet. The asset failed." Another pause. Then, "I'll clean it up." "Just get Cross out of Oregon before the marshals find him." The call ended, and the man reached into a suitcase, pulling out an airport janitor uniform. The next day, Sam returned to the hospital early. Carol Whitaker, the real grandmother, had stayed overnight in the lounge, refusing to leave. "I just don't understand how someone could take him like that," she said, voice thin. "She fed him, changed him, sang to him." Sam nodded gently. "People who are desperate do desperate things." "But there's more to this." Carol's eyes welled up. "I thought we were safe. After everything we went through with Lauren's mother." Sam tilted her head. "His biological mom," Carol nodded slowly. "She passed last year, car crash." "Single vehicle. Lauren was her nurse at the hospice." Everything inside Sam froze. "Wait, Lauren was her nurse?" "She used to visit the house. Said she wanted to help. She was kind, quiet. She brought Noah a birthday gift once." Sam's stomach turned. This hadn't started at the airport. It had started a year ago. Diesel sat beside the door, suddenly alert, his ears pinned back. Low growl. Sam followed his gaze, a janitor pushing a mop cart down the hallway. Nothing unusual. Except Diesel's body tensed. Sam walked outside calmly, pretending to check her phone. As the janitor passed, she tapped her earpiece. "Security, patch me through to hospital cameras, level 3. I need eyes on corridor B." A few seconds passed. "Got it," said the voice on the line. Then, "Wait, that janitor." "He's not in our system." Sam turned slowly. The janitor had vanished. Only the mop cart remained, and a single white envelope resting on top. Inside it, a photo of Noah, sleeping peacefully. Stamped on the back, property of Solstice, return required. The wind over Yakima Valley had the kind of bite that cut through denim and duty. Sam Keller stood outside the city records building, Diesel beside her, scanning every passerby with the calm alertness of a war veteran. Neither of them said a word. Sam didn't need to speak, and Diesel had already said more than anyone else would ever believe. Inside, fluorescent lights buzzed like static in her skull. The records division felt ancient. Rows of beige filing cabinets, fingerprint-stained manila folders, the faint scent of coffee and toner. Sam handed her badge to the receptionist. "I'm looking for case files involving child custody disputes and missing toddlers in the past 5 years. I need ones that ended strangely." The woman gave her a long look. "Strangely?" Sam nodded. "Cases that didn't escalate legally, where the parents dropped charges, where the facts didn't line up." The receptionist hesitated, then motioned to the back room. "You'll want Roberta, down the hall." "She's been here longer than the building." Roberta was in her 60s and wore her glasses like a judge, halfway down her nose with a side of skepticism. Sam didn't expect her to remember much, but when she mentioned a nurse named Lauren and a child believed to be someone else's, Roberta's lips thinned. "We had one," she said. "Colorado. Woman swore the toddler she took was her son, reborn." "The case never stuck." Sam leaned forward. "Why?" "Because the real mom refused to testify. She said, get this, she looked happier with him than I ever made him." "Can you believe that?" Diesel let out a low, throaty huff. Sam wasn't sure if it was agreement or something else. Later that night in her hotel room, Sam called Locke. "I'm digging, but this goes deeper than Lauren." "She's not the architect, she's the product." "You think it's cult-like?" Locke asked. "No, it's more surgical. Like someone's refining grief, personalizing it, turning pain into justification." Locke was silent for a beat. "Then, I know someone who used to profile these kinds of networks. He left the Bureau a few years ago. PTSD. Name's Mason Beck. Bit of a recluse, but he knows pattern behavior better than anyone I've met." Sam closed her eyes. "Send me his location." "You sure?" "He's intense." "So is this." Mason Beck lived alone in an A-frame cabin near Olympia, nestled between a collapsed barn and a frozen pond. The place smelled like cedar, black coffee, and insomnia. He opened the door wearing a gray hoodie, a baseball cap, and eyes that hadn't known sleep in days. "You brought a dog," he said flatly. Sam nodded. "He's better at reading people than most agents." Diesel sat calmly on the porch, watching. "I only agreed to this because Locke said you weren't a bureau type." "I'm not." Mason stepped aside. "Then come in. But don't lie to me." Inside, Mason's cabin was a shrine to unresolved cases. Maps pinned with red string, boxes labeled with missing persons' initials, psychological profiles, and newspaper clippings yellowing at the corners. Sam laid out everything. Lauren Hayes. The baby. The bolo. The photo marked property of Solstice. Mason's fingers tapped nervously on a case binder. Then he stood. "I've seen this before. Not this exact scenario. But the layers, the emotional grooming, the belief conversion. It's not a kidnapping ring, it's a grief laundering operation." Sam stared. "What?" "They find people broken by loss, especially mothers, and offer them healing through delusion. They assign them someone else's child. Repackage trauma as rebirth." Sam's jaw clenched. "That's not therapy." Mason pointed at the clippings behind him. "No. It's psychotheological manipulation. And there's one name that keeps coming up in cases like this, Dr. Julian Cross. Sam nodded slowly. I've heard of him. He's not just running retreats, he's erasing the difference between memory and identity. He convinces people that what they need is more real than what was. Then Diesel barked once. Loud, sharp, directly at a photo on the board. Mason turned. It was a blurry shot of a retreat center deep in the Oregon pines. The sign read, Solstice Institute. The next day, Sam and Mason visited Carol Whitaker. Carol answered the door bundled in a knitted shawl, her eyes tired but clearer than the last time. Noah sat on the carpet behind her, stacking wooden blocks in silence. Diesel gave a soft chuff and patted in. Noah's eating again, Carol said. Sleeping more. But he doesn't speak unless Diesel's around. It's like he trusts the dog more than he trusts me. Sam knelt down. Do you have anything Noah made before the abduction? Drawings? Notes? Carol thought for a second, then walked to a drawer and returned with a spiral-bound sketch pad. He draws a lot. Especially dogs. Sam flipped through pages, scribbles of houses, stick figures, and then one that stopped her cold. A gray dog, black markings on the face. Sitting next to a child in a swing, it was Diesel, drawn with shocking accuracy. Sam's hand shook slightly. Carol, how long ago did he draw this? About a month before he went missing. Sam looked at Diesel, who was now lying beside the boy, one paw protectively over Noah's shoe. Mason stood behind her. He remembered the dog before he ever met him. Sam nodded. Or maybe he had met him. Somewhere deep in the fog of trauma. Somewhere the rest of them couldn't reach. They drove back to Olympia in silence. That night, Sam reviewed Diesel's deployment history. And there it was, 4 years ago, temporary assignment at a trauma center outside Portland. Therapy support for grief counseling. The center? Solstice Institute. Her stomach dropped. She picked up her phone and called Locke. I want a federal pretext. We're going in. Under what authority? Sam stared at the screen where Diesel's past photo stared back at her, eyes sharp, jaw strong, standing beside a woman labeled as Melissa Hart. She looked disturbingly like Lauren Hayes. Behavioral threat analysis, Sam said. Pattern of repeated identity manipulation. Cross is turning vulnerable women into abductors. You'll need a warrant. I'll get one, but I'm not waiting. She hung up. Mason glanced over from the passenger seat. You ever wonder why you got assigned to this case? Sam nodded slowly. Every second. Maybe the dog didn't just pick up on the truth. What do you mean? Maybe the dog picked you. The name Solstice Institute echoed in Sam's mind like a forgotten song you suddenly remember the lyrics to, but you wish you hadn't. Diesel hadn't moved since barking at the photo. His eyes were still fixed on the image of the retreat. It wasn't instinct, it was memory. Sam's voice was low. He's been there before. Mason's brow furrowed. You sure? She turned the photo around and pointed at a low wooden structure in the corner, an old shed, barely visible through pine trees. That building right there, I've seen it before, in Diesel's training records. He was assigned to a PTSD retreat for 6 weeks after Afghanistan, a trial run of therapy dogs for veterans and grief-stricken parents. Mason's voice dropped. Cross ran those retreats? Sam nodded grimly. He wasn't listed on staff, but he funded them through something called the Cypress Renewal Fund, shell company. Just enough layers to keep his name off public files. Mason's fingers tapped his coffee mug. Jesus, he's not healing people. He's harvesting them. The phrase lingered like smoke. Back at the motel, Sam scrolled through archived footage from a lecture Julian Cross gave at Stanford in 2014, years before he became a recluse. He was charismatic, well-dressed, but his words were chilling in hindsight. Memory is a narrative we agree upon with ourselves, but grief is where memory and meaning collide. He spoke about the plasticity of the brain, how trauma reshapes reality, and how healing must sometimes include replacing what was lost with something that feels true, even if it isn't. Sam's stomach churned. She turned to Mason. He's not a therapist. He's a sculptor of delusion. The next morning, they went back to Carol Whitaker's home, not to question her, but to watch Noah. Noah wasn't drawing anymore. He was lining up puzzle pieces, dog faces only. Diesel lay nearby, head on paws, his presence seemingly the only calm in the boy's world. Sam leaned toward Carol. Has he ever mentioned a name? A place? A phrase? Carol hesitated. Sometimes when he sleeps, he says, "The quiet house, the whisper house." Mason's eyes narrowed. That mean anything to you? Sam stood suddenly. It's a nickname for one of the buildings at Solstice. I saw it in a testimony once. A small cabin with soundproof walls. They called it that because inside nobody cries, or nobody hears it. Diesel let out a soft whine. Noah looked up. That's where she told me I was her angel. Later that day, Sam received a call from Locke. I pulled what I could on Cross, he said. No social media, no banking activity, but he's made 3 large land acquisitions in Oregon under the name Solstice Holdings, LLC. All remote, no utilities. Sam clenched her jaw. We need in. You'll need more than a warrant. That kind of setup? He's protected by a nest of NDAs, private contractors, and non-licensed therapy loopholes. I'm not kicking in his door, Sam said. Yet. I'm going to make him come to mine. Locke paused. What do you mean? I'm going to leak that I have Noah, and that he's remembering. You sure that's a good idea? No, Sam said. But it's the only way he'll make a mistake. That night, Mason staged a fake message on a grief support forum Cross was known to monitor under an alias, Shepherd 13. The post read, "The boy they took has started speaking again. He remembers everything, and he knows who the Whisper House belongs to." They waited. 36 minutes later, someone replied, "Children confuse fantasy and pain. They say many things." Then another post. "Silence is a kindness. You should reconsider what he remembers." The IP traced back to a VPN exit node in Redmond, but that wasn't the point. The tone, the certainty. Cross had read it. Sam turned to Diesel. Buckle up, partner. We're poking the hive now. At 3:12 a.m., a black SUV parked across the street from Carol Whitaker's house. Sam and Mason watched from the shadows. Diesel stood alert, chest rising and falling slowly like a loaded spring. 2 men stepped out, dressed in civilian clothes. One wore a Bluetooth earpiece, the other held something in his jacket pocket. Not a weapon, too light. A tranquilizer? They moved to the side gate. Sam clicked her comm. Now! Floodlights flared on. Diesel lunged forward, muzzled, leashed, but ferocious. The men froze. "Don't move!" Sam yelled, weapon drawn. They ran. Diesel broke free for a split second, just enough to tackle the one with the earpiece. He screamed and hit the ground hard. The other escaped into the dark. Mason cuffed the one on the ground. "Who sent you?" The man just laughed. "You have no idea what you've dragged that boy into." "He's not a missing child. He's a chosen one." Sam leaned in. "And you're about to be someone's cautionary tale." They found a burner phone in his pocket. One message stood out, time-stamped an hour earlier. "Observe only. Do not engage. The mother is unstable." The dog must be removed before Phase 2. Sam's hands shook slightly. "Phase 2?" Mason asked. Sam stared at the boy through the window. He was asleep, curled next to Diesel like nothing had ever happened. "They're not done," she whispered. "They're just getting started." The trees stood like quiet sentinels, bare arms stretched to the sky. The road curved sharply before disappearing into a thicket of firs. The only sign of human presence, a weathered wooden sign almost hidden by snow. Solstice Institute. Private property. No trespassing. Sam slowed the SUV, her breath fogging the windshield. Mason sat beside her, flipping through a packet of laminated IDs. Diesel, in the back seat, was motionless, but alert. "This place gives me the creeps," Mason muttered. Sam didn't reply. Her fingers tightened on the wheel. Beneath the cold steel of her badge, her instincts hummed like a live wire. This wasn't just a compound. It was a maze, and somewhere inside, the Minotaur waited. They arrived under the pretense of a Department of Health Human Services inspection, a routine evaluation, they claimed, in light of recent accusations about unregulated therapy and patient mistreatment. The Institute's gate opened slowly, reluctantly, as if the land itself wanted to keep its secrets buried. Lydia Vale was the first to greet them, mid-30s, too pale, her smile tight and mechanical. Her ID badge read Intake Coordinator. Her eyes flitted toward Diesel. "I wasn't told you were bringing an animal." "He's certified," Sam said calmly. "Trauma detection. Observational. We found patients disclose more with dogs present." Lydia swallowed. "Of course. Please, follow me." The facility was rustic on the outside. Natural wood, soft edges, muted stone pathways. But inside it was a different world. White walls, no clocks. Diffused light, the kind of clinical calm that often meant the opposite. Sam's attention flicked to the framed posters in the hallway. Phrases like, "Grief is a wound that doesn't bleed. New meaning comes in silence. Children remember what adults cannot." Diesel's ears twitched. His body stiffened as they passed a door labeled Memory Reclamation Suite. Lydia paused mid-step. "That wing is currently closed for maintenance." "Of course," Sam said. "Still, I'd like to tour all registered therapy areas." A flicker of something passed over Lydia's face. Fear. Guilt? "I'll see what I can do." They were assigned a handler, Elijah, a man in his late 20s, with a shaved head and a smile that never reached his eyes. He spoke like a brochure. "At Solstice, we believe grief isn't a condition to be treated. It's a portal. Pain must be repurposed, not erased." He gestured toward the therapy garden, a perfectly arranged courtyard with sand trays and meditation stones. No footprints. No wind chimes, not even birdsong. Sam noticed it first. "No children," she whispered to Mason. "No laughter. Nothing out of place." Mason leaned closer. "Feels like a set, not a sanctuary." Diesel trotted behind them, occasionally stopping, nostrils flaring at unseen scents. He growled once, low and primal, at a locked room on the east wing. A plaque beside it read, "Reintegration in progress. Do not disturb." Sam met Mason's eyes. That's where they're hiding something. Back in their assigned guest quarters, an overly pristine cabin that smelled of cedar and bleach, Sam pulled out her phone. No service. Mason was already unpacking equipment from a false-bottom duffel bag. Hidden microphones, a mini camera, and a fiber optic scope. "They scrubbed the place clean," he said. "No open Wi-Fi." Shielded walls, classic signs of containment protocol. Sam sat on the edge of the bed, her mind working. Cross isn't just running therapy sessions. He's running behavioral experiments. Diesel sat in front of the fireplace. He didn't sleep. His eyes tracked every shadow, every creak in the wall. Then a knock. A small folded note slid under the door. It read, "Check basement. Bring the dog." Signed, LV. They waited until 3 o'clock a.m. The facility was silent, save for the occasional wind against the windows. Sam and Mason moved through the service hallway, avoiding cameras using a blueprint Lydia had scribbled on the back of a tissue. The door to the basement was unmarked and hidden behind a linen closet. Inside, the stairs descended into darkness. Diesel moved first. The air changed, musty, dry, but faintly floral. Like the perfume aisle of a thrift store, Sam swept the flashlight across the room. What she saw made her heart freeze. A fully staged nursery, crib, rocking chair, teddy bears, spotless, no dust. Fresh linen. A mobile hung from the ceiling, plastic stars and moons turning ever so slowly, though no air stirred. "Too clean," Mason muttered. "This isn't a memorial. This is lived in." Diesel padded toward a corner cabinet, sniffed it once, then growled. Sam pulled out a small key-card scanner. Locked. But Diesel sat, eyes fixed on the handle. "Move," she whispered. Mason used a precision drill to pop the hinges. Inside, a sealed, thumbprint-locked case. Sam cracked it open with a thermal pad. What they found inside chilled them both. Dozens of USB drives, each labeled with names and dates. Beside them, a ledger, cross-referencing those names with patient IDs and child aliases. Mason held up a flash drive labeled Melissa Hart, Charlie Re-Entry Protocol. Sam opened the laptop. Video loaded. A woman sat in a chair. Pale, shaking. Across from her, a staff member held a doll and said softly, "This is Charlie." "He's missed you. You know him. You just forgot." The woman sobbed and reached for the doll. Diesel barked, sharp and loud. Someone was coming. Sam closed the laptop. Mason shut the cabinet, and they slipped out through the side stairwell. As they moved down the hallway, voices echoed behind them. "Did you secure the suite? We need to relocate the reclamation program." Cross said no exposure, not yet. Sam's pulse pounded in her ears. Too late. As dawn approached, Lydia met them near the therapy garden. Her hands shook as she passed Sam a worn flash drive, and her voice was barely a whisper. "He calls it assigning meaning, but he's stealing identities." Sam looked at her. "Why now? Why help us?" Lydia's eyes filled with tears. "Because the next child is arriving tomorrow, and this one's still alive." The sky outside turned a bruised shade of lavender. Dawn creeping over the pines brought no warmth, just the dull ache of realization. Sam sat alone in the cabin, elbows on the desk, staring at the flash drive Lydia had given her. Diesel lay by the door, eyes wide open, ears cocked to every sound. He hadn't rested all night. A dull knock. Mason stepped in quietly, brushing snow off his shoulders. "South Wing's shut down," he said. "I overheard 2 staffers call it the silent nursery. No cameras, no staff rotation, and the delivery truck from Seattle. It didn't carry food. It carried restraint equipment." Sam slid the drive into her encrypted laptop. What loaded made her stomach knot. Video file. Subject N314. Stage 3. Re-entry. A dimly lit room. A woman, early 30s, seated across from Dr. Cross. Her hands shook as she clutched a blanket. Next to her, a toddler no older than 4. "Tell me who this is," Cross said gently. The woman flinched. "That's my son. That's Nathan." "You're sure?" "Yes." "Yes, I know him," Cross smiled. "Even though Nathan died in a car crash?" Her expression froze. Then tears. I don't care. This is him." The boy stared silently, blank. Distant. Sam paused the video. "This isn't therapy," she whispered. "This is Implantation. They had names now. Names of real patients, names of children. Some of them, possibly, orphans from systems that never followed through. Others, maybe worse, alive, but reprogrammed, reassigned. Mason leaned against the wall, hand over his mouth. They're building identities, like Legos. Assembling grief-based families, selling healing like a script. Diesel stood suddenly, growling again, deep and trembling. His nose pointed to the vent above the window. A voice whispered through it, barely audible, "He's listening." Cross nose. Then silence. Sam bolted upright. "Time's up. We move now." Under the cover of fog, they made their way back to the east wing. This time they used the access panel Lydia had marked in red ink, behind a janitor's closet. Inside, darkness. The kind of dark that eats sound. They descended a stairwell carved into bedrock. It didn't feel like part of the original building. It felt like something older, secret. Diesel refused to be leashed. He took point, every sense on edge. They passed empty rooms, surgical lights, soundproof doors, and then they found it. The observation gallery. One-way glass overlooked a room where a woman sat cross-legged on a padded floor, murmuring lullabies to a baby that didn't respond. The baby was a doll, but the woman believed. On the far wall they saw a large whiteboard, scrawled across it in block letters, "Grief is a map. All you have to do is redraw the lines." Then a cold voice behind them. "You weren't invited down here." Sam turned, gun raised. Dr. Warren Cross stood calm, hands at his sides, wearing an expression of mild disappointment, like a parent catching a child peeking at Christmas presents too early. "You really don't understand, do you?" he said quietly. "We're not hurting them. We're offering meaning. Where the world gave them nothing, we give them narrative." "Wholeness." Mason kept his gun up. "You're hijacking memories." Cross didn't flinch. "Memories are suggestions. Nothing more. With enough care, enough consistency, you can bend reality. And if it heals, does it matter?" Sam stepped forward. "And what happens when the suggestion breaks? When they remember the truth?" Cross smiled faintly. "That's why we're training the children first." Suddenly, Diesel lunged. Not at Cross, but toward a side panel on the wall. He clawed frantically, barking, whining. Sam rushed over and yanked the panel open. Inside, a child. A real one, boy curled up. Mute, breathing rapidly through a surgical mask. His wrist bore a tag. Subject, J52, alias Noah. Sam dropped to her knees. "Noah, can you hear me?" He flinched, but Diesel crawled beside her and whined softly. Noah looked at the dog. And for the first time, his eyes focused. He mouthed, "Help." Sirens. Alarms. Footsteps overhead. Cross didn't move. "You can't stop it," he said. "This is the future of grief. Controlled, packaged, delivered." Sam stood slowly. Her voice shook. "No, this is trauma you've dressed up in science." Mason cuffed Cross as two security guards burst in, neutralized swiftly by Diesel's growl and Sam's badge. She carried Noah in her arms, the boy clinging to her jacket, silent tears cutting tracks in his dirt-smudged face. Outside, the morning sun broke through clouds. FBI units swarmed the institute. Children were found. Records seized. And Cross was led away in cuffs, still muttering about repairing the unrepairable. Sam sat in the SUV, Noah asleep against her shoulder. Diesel lay curled beside them, his head resting on Noah's shoe. Mason shut the trunk, got in, and sighed. "Well," he said, Guess we just ripped the mask off a monster." Sam didn't answer. She was looking at Diesel and thinking, he knew from the start. He always knew. The hospital room was small, sterile, and heavy with the scent of antiseptic. Outside the window, the Oregon pines swayed under a dull gray sky. Inside, a little boy sat stiffly on a padded bench, his tiny legs dangling, his eyes fixed on the far corner of the room like he was waiting for something to jump out and hurt him. Sam sat across from him, still wearing her duty boots. Her badge hung loose around her neck. She wasn't there as a marshal today. Not really. She was there as someone trying to understand what the hell just happened. Diesel lay on the floor between them, calm but alert. Noah's fingers fidgeted with the fur on Diesel's back, tugging, twisting, then smoothing it flat again. He hadn't spoken a word since the rescue, not to Sam. Not to the doctors. But he wouldn't leave Diesel's side either. That meant something. Noah leaned closer and whispered the same syllable again, barely a breath. "Ra." Sam's eyes narrowed. "What did you say, buddy?" The boy looked up, startled, but instead of fear, his eyes held something older. Something lost and suddenly remembered. He repeated it, firmer this time. "Ra." Diesel raised his head and gave a low, familiar chuff, the sound he only made when someone said his old name. A name no one had called him in years. Flashback. 4 years ago. The Louisiana floodwaters had been receding for days, but the streets were still impassable. Sam had volunteered for disaster deployment, never expecting to be assigned to canine rescue detail. The dogs they recovered from destroyed homes, drowned shelters, and collapsed levees were traumatized. But one German shepherd stood out. He refused to leave the wreckage of a half-flooded house, kept returning to the same bedroom, barking at a closet door. Inside, they found a little girl, barely alive, clinging to a teddy bear, whispering, "The dog told me not to move." That dog was nameless at the time, but the shelter staff started calling him Raw, short for radar, because nothing seemed to escape his sense of where the pain was. Sam adopted him on the spot. He became Diesel during official K9 certification, but sometimes, in sleep, he still responded to Raw. And now this child, Noah, a total stranger, was calling him that too. Back in the hospital room, Sam's fingers hovered over the keyboard of her government-issued laptop. She'd spent the last 6 hours digging into redacted Solstice Institute files, decrypted from the USB Lydia had hidden in that locked cabinet. There were hundreds of video files, patient logs, session transcripts, but one folder was marked differently. Therapy Pilot K9 Series RA. Inside were recordings, old ones, dating back to when Diesel had first been certified. Sam played the first clip. Video log, number 04. Session with subject Melissa Hart. Melissa was 34. Her son Jacob had drowned in a boating accident 3 years prior. She was recruited to Solstice as part of advanced grief re-entry therapy. The footage showed her sitting on a therapy mat. Diesel, younger then, leaner, sat in front of her. Dr. Cross's voice echoed from off-camera. "Tell me what you see." Melissa wept softly.
"It's him. I remember this. The way he scratched at the door when Jacob cried. It's all coming back."
"What triggered it?"
She hesitated. "The eyes."
"The sound, that little snort he makes when he lies down." Sam pressed pause. Her chest felt tight. This wasn't grief therapy. It was memory manipulation using Diesel as a trigger. His presence, his scent, his patterns, reactivating emotional pathways in vulnerable patients, and Diesel had been used without her consent. Mason arrived hours later with a medical file in hand. "You need to see this," he said, dropping it on the table. It was Noah's intake file from Solstice, under the alias Daniel Hayes. According to these records, the boy wasn't just abducted, Mason explained. He was part of a targeted placement trial. Cross was testing if a grieving adult could fully accept a child with no emotional ties by feeding them the child's routines, language patterns, even objects from the deceased. Sam flipped to the therapy log. The sessions were brutal. Lauren Hayes, the woman from the airport, had been given photos, voice recordings, and childlike behavioral scripts to study. She was told this child would respond if she just believed enough. Sam's voice shook. So the boy was taught to become someone else, and she was taught to forget the truth. Mason nodded grimly. And Diesel was used as a constant in both stories. The familiarity, the thread that made the illusion feel real. Later that evening, they set up a video call with Melissa Hart. Now under psychiatric care, Melissa had agreed to speak with federal agents. On screen, her eyes were tired, her voice steady but slow. When Diesel entered the frame, she gasped softly, then smiled. "It's him," she said. Sam leaned in. "Do you remember anything about what they made you do?" Melissa nodded. "They told me to look at him. They told me he would help me remember. But every time I did, I felt like someone else was remembering through me. Like the grief wasn't mine anymore. Like it was being rerouted." Mason scribbled notes. "You ever hear the name Noah Whitaker?" She shook her head, but then paused. "There was a child. I never saw him, just heard crying, in the hallway. The staff called him Jay, said he was a quiet case, but the dog, he always barked when they took him past my door. That night, as rain pattered softly against the motel window, Sam sat beside Noah's hospital bed. Diesel lay curled protectively at the foot. Noah stirred in his sleep, sweat beading on his brow. Then came the panic. Whimpers. Breathing fast, he clutched the sheets, eyes wide, stuck in a memory no one else could see. Sam leaned down. "Hey, buddy, it's okay." But Noah didn't hear her. He screamed, "Don't take the dog!" "Don't take her!" Diesel jumped to his feet, alert but not aggressive. He gently nuzzled the boy's arm. Slowly, Noah's breathing eased. Then, in a whisper, he said, "He stayed with me, even in the dark." At sunrise, Carol Whitaker arrived, eyes raw from emotion, but determined. She brought an old stuffed bear, Noah's favorite. The moment she stepped into the room, Noah looked up. Their eyes locked. A tremble passed through him, then, "Grandma?" Tears fell freely. Carol rushed forward, holding him tight. Diesel nudged the bear forward. Noah hugged it like a lifeline. He whispered again, "Rah," and Diesel laid his head on Noah's lap. The next day, Sam met with Deputy Chief Brandon Locke. He looked shaken. "Cross is gone," he said. "Vanished after posting bail through some shell organization. He had fake IDs. We're tracking movement across the California border." "Looks like he had other sites lined up." Sam's hands clenched. "More kids?" Locke nodded. "At least 3. All under the radar. We have partial manifests, but we'll need help to stop him in time." Sam looked down at Diesel, then at Noah's room. "I'm not done," she said quietly. Neither is he. Rain clung to the windows of the safe house like breath on cold glass. It was the kind of Pacific Northwest drizzle that didn't fall so much as hang in the air, slow, stubborn, and quiet. And in that gray hush, something shifted. Sam was pacing. Diesel stood alert by the door, tail low but steady, eyes tracking every step she made. He knew what that kind of pacing meant. It wasn't frustration. It was readiness. The drive had given them names, handlers, technicians, even an internal document labeled Project Him. But the one name that kept surfacing over and over wasn't a soldier or scientist. It was a grief therapist. Dr. Malcolm Rourke, not on payroll, not a DoD contractor. Just a civilian therapist in Boise, Idaho, known for his controversial therapy methods on bereaved children. Why would a grief counselor be involved in a covert identity suppression program? Mason asked, scrolling through digital files. Sam stared at the screen. Because he wasn't treating their grief. He was rewriting it. Boise, Idaho. 2 days later, the neighborhood looked harmless. Neatly mowed lawns. Old trees bending slightly from the weight of spring rain. Mailboxes painted with little handprints and smiley suns. Rourke's office sat at the end of the cul-de-sac. A small red brick bungalow with blue shutters and a brass plaque on the door. Dr. Malcolm Rourke, Child Family Therapy. Inside, soft music played. Diffused lavender filled the air. It was designed to disarm. Sam and Mason sat across from the man himself, a silver-haired therapist in a cardigan, legs crossed, glasses resting on his lap. He didn't flinch when Sam showed him Noah's photo. Didn't blink when she asked about Solstice. Instead, he said, "I always thought they'd come knocking one day." Back in the SUV, Sam leaned against the passenger seat, shaking. He just admitted it. He didn't just admit it, Mason said, hands tight on the wheel. He detailed it. That file he gave us. That was the blueprint. The folder Rourke had handed over, without hesitation, was stuffed with logs, diagrams, therapy transcripts. It laid out the foundation of Project Him, where dogs weren't just support animals, they were cognitive anchors. "We used them to reduce dissociative backlash," Rourke had explained, sipping tea like he wasn't confessing a war crime. "A dog's presence, especially a trained canine, acts as a living metronome. It keeps the child's emotional rhythm steady. That made it easier to adjust memories." Sam had nearly punched him. That night, Sam stood outside Noah's door. Diesel lay curled up inside, head resting on the boy's legs. The child still hadn't spoken much, but when Sam sat beside him earlier, Noah had asked a question that made her heart stop. "Did you ever have to forget someone you loved?" She hadn't answered. But now, staring at Diesel's unmoving shape and the rise and fall of Noah's chest, she whispered into the dark hallway, "Yes." Back in Portland, Agent Danielle "Danny" Creed was waiting. Creed wasn't your typical suit. She had the kind of presence that made men straighten up in elevators and secretaries go silent in the middle of typing. Black boots, leather jacket over her badge, hair in a braid. Scar over her left eyebrow, a souvenir from Afghanistan. She didn't smile when Sam and Mason walked in. She just said, "Doctor." Rourke's file hit every flag we got on Project Him. My orders are to dig deeper, but off the books. This doesn't go through FBI channels. We're treating it like a ghost op. Why? Sam asked. Creed looked directly at her. Because someone high up signed off on all this. If this leaks, we're not just talking child trafficking or identity experiments, we're talking national panic. The evidence from Rourke's file pointed to one last name, Dr. Leonard Cross, former behavioral scientist at DARPA, specialized in emotional imprinting under extreme cognitive load. Cross had disappeared 5 years ago after a scandal involving experimental therapy on foster children. Now Sam knew where he was hiding, Montana, a defunct Cold War satellite station turned private compound listed under a shell company called Cradle Systems. It sat just outside Livingstone, nestled in the mountains. Mason leaned back in his chair. You're thinking of going after him. I'm thinking we don't have a choice, Sam replied, because Noah's not the only one. She pulled out another photo Rourke had reluctantly given up. A little girl, blonde, 6 years old, terrified smile. Subject 9B, Lena. She went through the same program, and if Cross is still active, others are out there. Later that night at the safe house, Diesel whined near the door. Sam opened it and saw Noah standing in the hallway, holding his journal. He held it out.
For you. She took it slowly, flipping past the pages she'd seen. Near the back was a new drawing, not of Diesel.
Not of him, it was of her. And underneath, in a child's shaky scrawl, she looked sad, but I think she's trying not to be. Sam closed the notebook and knelt.
You know, she said softly, you don't have to carry it alone anymore.
Noah looked at Diesel, then back at her.
He says we're a pack now, she smiled.
Yeah, kiddo. We are. The following morning, Sam sat in the safe house kitchen, her fingers wrapped tightly around a chipped ceramic mug. She hadn't slept, not really, not after reading the rest of Rourke's documents. Mason stepped in, holding a manila envelope. He dropped it on the table beside her coffee. That's the flight manifest, he said. From 3 years ago, government transport. No records of destinations, but the names match up with kids listed in Project HIM's therapy logs. Sam opened the folder and froze. One name leapt off the page, Langley, Noah E., age 5. There it was, the moment his life had been erased, folded into a lie, wrapped in the illusion of rescue. They hadn't just saved him, they had rewritten him. Without consent, without mercy. Later that day, they returned to Rourke's office. It had been cleared out, files gone, hard drives ripped. Even the couch cushions were missing, but Diesel was pacing, nostrils flared. Tail stiff, he was tracking something. Wait, he smells someone, Sam muttered, following the dog down the hallway. Diesel stopped near the baseboard heater, whining low. Sam knelt and pried it open. Inside was a small black notebook. Rourke's handwriting. It wasn't therapy notes. It was confessions. I warned them this would backfire, that using animals as psychological anchors would deepen the trauma, not heal it. But they insisted, make the child forget the loss. Rewrite the event. Program it out. And when it didn't work, they removed the subjects, relocated. Terminated. I was told Lena didn't survive the transition. They blamed her dog. Sam read that line 3 times. Then again, they blamed her dog. Back at the safe house, Sam laid the notebook on the table. Mason and Agent Creed stood silent. They were using the dogs not just for emotional support, Creed said. They were using them as cognitive crutches. Erase the parent, swap in the handler, associate the child's safety with the new identity. But dogs remember, dogs mourn. Dogs resist, Mason exhaled. And when the bond failed, they eliminated the variable. Sam's voice dropped to a whisper. They killed the dogs. Creed didn't deny it. That night, Diesel wouldn't leave Noah's side. The boy had started drawing again. This time, a picture of a plane. It looked like a military transport, but with something strange beneath it. A black box, leaking shadows. Sam sat beside him on the floor. Hey, she said gently. Is that from a dream? Noah shook his head. No, it's from before. Sam's heart clenched. What do you remember about it? He looked up. There were other kids and cages. She sucked in a breath. Cages? He nodded. One boy cried too loud. They took his dog. Sam swallowed hard. She wanted to tell him he was safe now, that nothing like that would ever happen again. But she couldn't promise that. Not with Cross still out there. The next morning, Sam called a meeting. We go to Montana, she said. We find Cross. We shut this down. Mason nodded. And if he's armed? Then we bring the truth with us, she said. And Diesel. Creed leaned in. There's something else. She tossed a satellite photo on the table. It showed Cross's facility, an old Cold War comm station buried in the mountains, surrounded by electric fencing. Security's tight. But what's strange is this. She pointed at a side structure near the tree line. Thermal scans show movement, animal-sized. Regular patterns. Sam narrowed her eyes. Dogs, Creed nodded. I think they're still running experiments. Before they left, Sam had one final conversation with Noah. She knelt in front of him, holding his hands. We're going to find the place where it all started, where you were taken from. There might be other kids like you, or animals like Diesel. We're going to help them. Noah looked afraid, but he nodded. Will I remember everything? He whispered. Sam hesitated. Maybe. But you won't be alone when it comes back. You'll have Diesel, and me. He reached out and hugged her. I don't want him to go in a cage again, he said. He won't, Sam promised. Not while I'm breathing. As they loaded up the SUV, the clouds began to break. For the first time in days, sunlight pierced through the gray ceiling above Portland. Diesel sat proudly beside Noah, ears perked, gaze focused. They were heading into the storm. But this time they were the lightning. The road into Montana twisted like a snake through pine-covered cliffs and half-frozen rivers. Sam drove in silence, her jaw clenched, hands tight on the wheel. Diesel lay in the back seat next to Noah, alert but calm. Mason rode shotgun, scanning every road sign like it might bite. They were 60 miles from the last known location of Dr. Thomas Cross, a name that had once meant cutting-edge behavioral therapy, now stained with the shadows of illegal memory suppression, child erasure, and canine neurological weaponization. I still can't wrap my head around it, Mason said, breaking the silence. Training dogs to carry trauma, then trying to delete it? Sam didn't take her eyes off the road. It's not about deletion. It's about control. The facility was nestled in an abandoned Cold War radar outpost, concrete domes sunk into hills, camouflaged by years of neglect. Satellite data showed life, movement, heat. As they approached the perimeter, Sam cut the engine. Noah stirred. Are we here? Diesel lifted his head. His hackles rose. They were close. Sam crouched near the brush, pulling out the infrared scope. 2 guards, she said. Standard perimeter sweep, armed, but something's off. They're not military. No insignia. Mason joined her. Mercs? Worse, she replied. Private contractors. They waited until the shift changed, then slipped in through a drainage tunnel behind the east wall. Diesel led them, nose low, muscles taut. He knew this place, or something inside him did. Noah stayed back with Creed, who had set up a makeshift command post in the tree line with a satellite relay. If something goes sideways, Sam told her, you get him out. No questions. Creed nodded. I'll bring you all back, Sam said. Inside the bunker, the air was sterile and too cold. A hallway stretched ahead, humming faintly. LED panels lit one side, each door labeled not with names, but codes. HN002, HN003. HN? Mason whispered. Project Him, Sam muttered. These are the test subjects. They passed an observation room, its window darkened. On a whim, Sam flipped a switch. Inside, a large German shepherd paced in a glass cell. His eyes were glassy. Movements robotic. Mason winced. Jesus. The dog turned toward the mirror, then froze. His ears twitched, nose lifted. Something primal stirred. It was Diesel's scent. Diesel padded forward, pressed his snout to the glass. The other dog began to tremble. Then he sat and cried. They moved deeper into the compound. At the far end, they found what they'd feared most, the lab. Rows of medical tables, MRI machines, neural headgear, kennels. In the corner, a single laptop blinked awake. Sam logged in using Rourke's credentials, the screen filled with files. Project HIM, final phase, primary objective, sustained grief transference, sudden. Status, unstable. Subjects retain trauma. Despite reassignment outlier. Subjects, Diesel, K901 unseen. Immunity to memory, rewrite. Noah Langley, HN005. Full rejection of implant. Lena Ward, HN004. Presumed deceased. Survival, uncertain. Sam stared at the name. Lena. She wasn't dead? Before she could speak, the room light shifted. From behind them, a voice echoed, "You've come far, Samantha, but you still don't understand the point, Doctor." Cross, alive and waiting. Dr. Thomas Cross stood in the observation bay like he belonged there, calm, poised, unarmed, but far more dangerous than any weapon. His tailored jacket was out of place in this cold steel chamber, but his voice had the warmth of a teacher or a cult leader. "Diesel was never supposed to survive the transfer," he said softly. "But the thing about real connection, true grief, is that it sticks, even when you try to erase it." Sam raised her weapon. "Don't move." He didn't. He didn't even flinch. "I knew you'd come," he said. "Your dog is special, but so is the boy." From the corridor behind, the gentle sound of padded paws approached. Diesel moved forward slowly, his body low to the ground. Not aggressive, not afraid, alert. "Let me guess," Cross continued. "Noah said the word again. Raw. He remembers." "That's what I wanted. Recollection, not obedience." "Emotion is data." Mason stepped beside Sam. "Where is Lena Ward?" Cross's smile faltered. Then he pointed. "To the cryo chamber." They moved fast. Diesel led. No hesitation now. At the end of the east wing, beneath layers of steel and bioseal doors, they found it. A reinforced medical containment unit. Inside, a girl, barely 6, curled under thermal blankets, hooked up to a dozen monitors. Lena. Alive, barely. Sam's stomach twisted. "She was the prototype," Cross said from behind them. "We couldn't risk losing her to grief again, so we paused her." "You sedated a child for months?" Mason growled. "Time heals nothing," Cross answered, "but sleep delays the damage." Backup arrived. Creed and Sarged. Avery Dawson stormed the compound with federal agents. Cross was cuffed without a struggle. He kept talking. "There are more," he said as they led him away. "Grief makes us predictable. That's the beauty. You can program people through pain." Diesel didn't growl. He simply turned his back to Cross and walked away. Hours later, under dawn's blue light, Noah sat beside Lena's gurney in a recovery ambulance. He held her hand without speaking. She stirred. Her lips moved. "Raw?" Diesel climbed in, gently licked her fingers. Lena smiled. Small, tired. Sam stood outside, exhausted, watching, feeling. It wasn't just about stopping Cross. It was about restoring what grief had stolen. Dignity. Choice. Truth. In the final moments before the medevac departed, Sam turned to Mason. "We didn't just find a madman," she said. "We found a map to something bigger." He nodded. "Let's follow it." Diesel barked once. The sound wasn't sharp or commanding. It was resolute. The kind of bark that says, "I'm ready when you are." Oregon foothills. 1 month later. The morning sun spilled over the meadow behind the ranger center, casting golden light on the frost-tipped grass. A boy's laughter rang out like a bell, a sound so ordinary and yet so rare it pulled tears from the eyes of those who heard it. Noah Whitaker was running. Really running. His curls bounced in the air as he flung a blue tennis ball across the wide field. Diesel launched after it. At full sprint, the German shepherd's paws tore through the grass, his movement pure, focused, free. He caught the ball mid-air with a proud twist of his head, then trotted back, tongue hanging, tail wagging wildly. "Good boy, Ra!" Noah shouted. Sam Keller stood off to the side, her arms folded, her smile soft but steady. The warmth in her chest hadn't gone away since that night in the redwood forest. Maybe it never would. She'd take it. Carol Whitaker, Noah's grandmother, stepped beside her. "He sleeps through the night now," she said. "Doesn't call out, doesn't cry, just breathes easy." Sam nodded. "Diesel stays with him?" "Every night." Inside the main lodge of the Ranger Center, Lydia Vale adjusted a stack of children's books on a low shelf. She still walked with a certain caution, like the past might reach up from the floorboards, but there was color in her face again. She was speaking in full sentences, and most importantly, she'd started smiling. Across the room, Mason Beck stood by a bulletin board pinned with drawings, dozens of them. All by children, all of dogs. Each picture told a different version of the same truth, that some wounds couldn't be touched by words, but could be soothed by the warmth of fur and trust in two amber eyes. Mason read aloud from one child's card. "My dog knows when I'm sad. He doesn't fix it. He just stays." "That's enough." He blinked slowly. "Yeah," he muttered, "that's enough." Diesel was awarded the National K9 Hero of the Year in a ceremony that felt more like a family reunion than a press event. News crews showed up, of course. They wanted a shot of the boy and the dog. They wanted Sam's quote. But when it came time for the speech, Sam simply said, "He didn't save a child. He brought one back." And then she stepped off the stage. The applause followed her. 3 weeks later, Quantico, Virginia. Sam stood in the middle of a large training field, surrounded by handlers and dogs, new recruits, experienced teams, retired veterans. The sun was warm against her back. A sign read, "Child Rescue Behavioral Threat Response Division, K9 Operations Unit." Director, Samantha Keller. Avery Dawson jogged up beside her, Scout trotting close. "You sure about this?" she asked. Sam nodded. "There's a hole in law enforcement where empathy should be. I can't fix that everywhere, but I can start here." Diesel trotted over, flanked by 2 younger dogs in training. One of them, a black lab named Toby, carried a chew toy twice his size. Sam leaned down, scratched behind Diesel's ears. "We're not done, are we, boy?" Diesel licked her hand, then turned to Noah, who had arrived with Carol for the first full day of a pilot program, K9-assisted trauma therapy for children recovered from abductions. Noah ran toward Diesel again. Diesel bounded to meet him, and the world, at least in that little corner of it, was right again. That evening, as the stars came out, Sam sat on the porch of her cabin. Diesel curled at her feet. Mason joined her with 2 mugs of coffee. They said little. They didn't need to. After a long moment, Mason broke the silence. "You know what still gets me?" "What?" "That Diesel knew, at the airport. Before anyone, before us, before the paramedics. Before the feds. He knew something was wrong." Sam looked down at the dog. "He always does." As the night deepened, a gentle breeze stirred the tall grass. Inside the center, Noah was asleep, clutching his toy bear. Lena Ward was across the hall, safe now, beginning to speak again, and at the foot of each of their beds, curled up tight, were two dogs who never stopped listening. Some dogs are trained to find bombs, others find drugs, but a rare few, they find the truth, even when no one else can see it. Later that week, Sam received an envelope postmarked from Oregon. It was thick, hand-addressed, and carried the slightly uneven scrawl of a child. She opened it at her desk in the K-9 Behavioral Unit office. Inside were three things: a crayon drawing of Diesel labeled "My Hero," a photo of Noah sleeping peacefully with Diesel curled at his feet, and a note, short and simple, in shaky block letters. "I am not scared at night anymore, because Diesel is real. And he's not afraid of anything. Noah." Sam pressed the letter to her chest and took a breath, the kind that makes your ribs hurt just a little, because your heart is finally starting to heal. Across the country, people were still talking. The footage of Diesel barking at the terminal, the confrontation, the moment Lena was found, it had gone viral. News outlets argued over the timing, the airport's delay, the FBI's late response. Experts debated canine cognition and pattern detection. But none of that mattered to Sam, or to Noah, or to Lena's parents. They knew the truth. And Diesel? He didn't care about headlines. He was busy watching over the people who needed him most. 1 year later, the new K-9 trauma unit was no longer a pilot program. It had expanded to 4 major cities, working closely with Child Protective Services, the Marshals, and DHS. Dogs trained not just to sniff out threats, but to recognize fear, freeze responses, and silent cries for help. Sam's team called it empathy detection. Mason Beck was now deputy director. Lydia Vale had joined as a licensed trauma specialist. And yes, Noah sometimes visited as their unofficial junior consultant. At one press conference, a skeptical reporter asked Sam, "Do you really believe a dog can tell when a child's been trafficked?" Sam didn't flinch. She just leaned into the mic and said, "I believe dogs know when evil walks into the room and when innocence is being erased. And sometimes they bark until someone listens." That quote would be printed on a mural in the K-9 unit's main headquarters 6 months later. Back at the Ranger Center, fall, Carol sat on a bench beneath a red maple, watching Noah build a small obstacle course for Diesel out of hay bales and cones. Other children played nearby. Some had lost parents. Some had run from them. All were healing. Diesel bounded over the last bale, skidded, turned back for the boy with his tail high in the air. They were a team now, not just a boy and his dog, but 2 survivors who had rewritten each other's stories. Noah giggled and called out, "Again, rah!" "Again!" Sam approached with her coffee. "How's he doing?" Carol smiled. "He sleeps?" "He laughs. He lets me hold his hand again." Sam nodded. "He trusts." They sat in silence for a while. Then Carol whispered, "Thank you for not giving up on him." Sam looked out at the boy and the dog and said softly, "I didn't, but Diesel never even considered it." That night stars spilled across the Oregon sky like scattered salt. Inside the lodge, kids curled into blankets. Some clutched stuffed animals. Some held the collars of their assigned dogs. In the quiet of the common room, Mason read to Lena from a picture book, her favorite. Lena leaned against him, half asleep, and Diesel lay at her feet, eyes open, watching the fire. He'd saved her once. And he wasn't done. Sometimes the world breaks people. Sometimes it takes and takes and takes. But sometimes the world gives you a dog like Diesel, a dog who barks when no one else sees the danger, a dog who walks straight into hell if it means pulling a child out, and never asks for anything but a place by your side. If this story touched your heart, even just for a moment, type 1 in the comments. If you believe Diesel deserves a second medal for what he did, just type 0. Your simple comment helps more people find stories like this, stories that matter. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell. We share true, soul-stirring animal stories every single week. Tales of loyalty, courage, and the silent heroes who walk on 4 legs. Next, don't miss our upcoming video. A stray cat refused to leave a boy's hospital window until the night he cried out. We'll see you there.